or imperative statements that like you couldn't actually arrive at them by any like serious investigation of like the facts. So that's pretty popular these days. But anyway, so now we're getting more into like Philippa Foot and her.
A quick question.
Sure.
So I kind of get the first one, the emotivism one, because it's just sort of like the idea is that the sort of statement "it is wrong to cross the line" just represents more like sort of an emotional reaction.
Right. Right.
But does the prescriptivism sort of imply that that the command is sort of an innate human thing, or like?
No, that's a good question. No, the prescriptivist. Not only does the prescriptivist not have a theory about how the speaker arrived at this, it's kind of intrinsic to their position that there doesn't need to be that. So, like, if you're we've got Joe, the union worker, and he says, it is wrong to cross the picket line. The prescriptivist interprets that as Joe saying, don't cross the picket line. The prescriptivist, they may, but they don't need to explain why Joe thinks that. He may have all kinds of reasons for saying that, or for wanting to put that position forward. But it's not intrinsic to the prescriptivist view that there be a reason for that. In fact, if anything, I would say it's intrinsic to the prescriptivist view that a deeper reason for this doesn't exist. For the prescriptivist, this is kind of the baseline level of ethical thinking.
Does it automatically imply that they're in a societal context? Does it imply they're talking to someone else? They're telling someone else to do or not do things, or is that just the way it's formulated?
No, it would have to be. Well, that's the thing is non-cognitivism. That's actually kind of a good point in the history of 20th century philosophy, and that non-cognitivism arises because of the linguistic turn in philosophy. You had, well, I won't go into logical positivism, but basically yes, to make the answer short and concise, non-cognitivism is coming out of a tradition where you analyze philosophy on the basis of what linguistic elements are in it, and it yes, it presumes that there's there is a social context, there are people with a common language, someone is listening to this. You wouldn't say this if there wasn't someone to listen to you. Yeah, that's as much as I'm going to say about that. Is that basically clear? Okay. All right. So now we've kind of gotten to the beginning, the actual beginning of this lecture. But before we actually dive into Philippa Foot's own work, there's kind of two people I need to metaphorically kick out of the lecture hall before we actually start. And those people are God and Plato. As far as I can tell, yeah.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Now, Philippa Foot's an avowed atheist. Now, suppose you were trying to refute this idea, or this kind of family of ideas, that moral statements don't have any cognitive content. There's two really easy solutions right there that you're going to want to reach for. One is divine command theory, and the other is the theory of the forms. And as far as I can tell, Philippa Foot doesn't believe in either of them. She's an avowed atheist, and as far as I can tell, actually, I'm quite certain that she definitely wouldn't believe in some form of the good. You're all familiar with that, of course, already. But both of those views are seen as being wildly implausible in contemporary ethics. So when going forward, we're not trying to refute this in some way that would rely on either of those two things. So anyway, now actually going forward. So according to Philippa Foot, and I think you'll agree, non-cognitivism relies quite heavily on a fact-value distinction. You have facts, there is a picket line and you could cross it, and then there are values that we lay on top of those facts and that we can interpret in whatever way. But the values themselves are not necessary. They come from us. They're not facts about the universe. And it's actually not crazy for non-cognitivism to rely on this fact-value distinction. One of the things that's motivating all of this is Hume's practicality requirement. Now, Hume's practicality requirement, David Hume came up with it, he basically claims that morality has an action-guiding character, and the purpose of morality is to produce or prevent action. So if you're operating in the context of this practicality requirement, it makes sense to have a fact-value distinction, because for the non-cognitivists, it's the values that promote or prevent action. So like just the mere fact that like there is a picket line, I could cross it or I could not. That fact alone, it's at least not obvious why that would motivate or prevent someone to cross it or not cross it. You need kind of a value that is based on the person's own internal like attitudes, motivations, feelings, in order to get something that could reasonably be considered to be an explanation for action.